Story 1. A former friend who called me a bad influence for being child-free just demanded today that I take in his family plus 3 kids into my home. First, this isn't a post where I'm asking if I did the right thing or not. I know I did the right thing. This is a pure rant about this emotional day because if anyone is going to understand, it's you all in the child-free community. The gist? A former friend, Dave, not real name, who I haven't had any contact with for almost 3 years, just got in touch with me again. He claims he has a home emergency and needs to find a place for him, his wife and 3 kids to stay while the home situation gets fixed. This is the same guy who, when I was going through something traumatic, told me he can't be my friend because I'd be a bad influence to his kids, being child-free. A bit of background. The reason for the friendship ending? I was in a high-stress situation and very sad. My father dying was just one of the terrible things that happened in a span of 3 months. I was looking for consolation, and instead, Dave told me that me being a child-free was a bad influence on their family, had a wife plus 2 kids then. In short, they didn't want to spend time around me as I wasn't worth it when they have more valuable friends. This was someone I had known since graduate school and had spent a lot of time doing fun stuff with, like rock climbing. Dave and I were among a group of mutual buddies who regularly rented out lake houses or winter lodges for summer and winter sports activities. We're talking 10 plus years. Then to just ditch me because he thought I wasn't useful hurt a lot, especially when I was dealing with some really sad stuff. Even more so because I was there for him when he found out his mom had cancer and then was there for him at his mom's funeral. Like I said, I haven't spoken or texted him in almost 3 years. I chalked it up to people getting really weird when they have kids, that they fall into a traditional conservative mindset that anyone who isn't wanting or working toward a Leave It to Beaver 2.5 kids situation is somehow suspect. Then today, I saw a text pop up on my phone from Dave. I never erased or blocked his number from my phone, so his name was still saved. And there it was. He asked me to let him and his 3 kids stay with me at my house because their water heater broke and it's kind of an emergency situation. He knows I now live in the same city as him, and it would be a really big favor and he'd owe me. Okay, so lots of emotions with that. Apparently, since he told me I'm a bad influence, him and his wife had a 3rd kid. Cool baby, I guess. My biggest question was, why ask me of all people? I asked Dave why he was asking me to do this for him. His response was basically that he was all out of options and that no one has the room for him and the 3 kids, especially with his 5-month-old. I asked him why can't he arrange a hotel room for them. He said that would be really expensive and they're in a lot of medical debt already from their newest kid having to be in the NICU when he was born. I said that sounds tough, but again, why me? He said he knew I helped out someone last year with emergency housing and saw I had enough extra room for guests. Since I was so generous back then, I could be generous with him now. I knew exactly what he was talking about, but I really wanted to know how that situation was delicate and I thought a private family matter. He said it was posted on Facebook by the couple I helped. Quick segue. About this time last year, one of my good college friends, Kate, with lupus got COVID-19. She was being so careful too. It sucked because this was before the vaccines rolled out first for vulnerable people. She is my age, mid-30s, and very healthy aside from lupus. She's a marathon runner actually. Kate's lupus ended up making COVID even worse, and she ended up in the ICU. On top of that, she was pregnant, and her husband had to make the decision to save her life over the fetus. Basically, it was either giving life-saving medicine and care to Kate at the expense of her fetus, or she died. Thankfully, he's a good guy and let the doctors end the pregnancy to save her life. Kate's mother was an a-hole and said that her daughter should have died with the baby. She said Kate's life is not worth much anymore and even tried to bring in a priest to try to give her last rites. Kate was in a coma at the time. This caused a huge dramatic fallout, as you would imagine. Kate's brother and his wife needed a place to stay away from their a-hole mother immediately. I had an extra room and I'm an easy distance from the hospital. They stayed with me for 2 days until they locked down a hotel room in one of those long-term residence hotels. No one was sure Kate was going to make it out alive, so they understandably wanted to be nearby. They lived out of state and were staying with the shitty mother while their sister was in the hospital. Thankfully, Kate made it out alive and has since disowned her mother. She actually remembers, while in the coma, people talking about the priest trying to break in. I let the brother and his wife into my home because these people were good people, have always been supportive, and still are some of the most gracious people I know. Apparently, unbeknownst to me because I'm not on Facebook, is that either Kate's brother or his wife posted something about how much of a decent person I was to help them out in a dire moment of need and a light during a very dark period for them. They told me as much to my face. I just didn't know that they shared the situation on social media. So back to today. Dave saw that stuff last year, kept it in his head, and thought I would let his family and kids into my home with open arms. Frankly, I told him to shove it. I was pissed he was trying to guilt me into letting him and his family into my house for an unspecified amount of time. That he knows I'm child-free, hell, he even said me being child-free is a bad influence on his family. Yet all of a sudden, when it's convenient for him, I'm magically not a bad influence and he should be able to waltz back into my life without even a single apology for the shitty things he said 3 years ago. I told him being child-free means I don't want kids in my house for an extended period of time. If I did, I wouldn't be child-free. That I was not going to disrupt my life and my 2 cats to be a bed and breakfast for his 3 kids. He said I was selfish and to think of his kids, that there's no hot water in his house. I told him that he can whip out a credit card or get one of his relatives to cover a hotel stay. He gave me more excuses, brought up their medical debt again, and said it'll only be for a few days. I said that multiple days for a broken hot water heater sounds extremely suspect. Stuff like that can be fixed relatively quickly. I know residency laws in our state, and if someone stays 7 days in someone's home, then they can claim tenants' rights. I was not about to risk this turning into a thing where I can't get rid of them. He told me off and then said he will blast me all over social media and to all my friends that I won't help a family of 3 in an emergency, and that I want little kids to suffer. Told him to pound sand and eat a dick. He hasn't been a friend for years. He doesn't even know my address. All he knows is that I live seemingly close in the same city and that I live alone. He can blast me on social media all he wants. I'm not on Facebook, so I don't give a single F what the gaggle of Karens think of me. Told him social media isn't real life. If he does actually share this with my actual friends, that they'd laugh right in his face. Told him I have all his texts for proof of the way he spoke to me and how he's a big a-hole. Told him he used to be a decent guy, that we had a lot of nice times together, that I'm still sorry about his mom, and I am sorry that he went down this path in life since it sounded like he must be really miserable, but he's a bad influence in my life so I just can't have him around. I'm sure he'll understand since he said the same about me. That was the gist of the last thing I said. He went off until I blocked him. I'm really sad about it. He really used to be a decent person back 10 years ago, and his mom was a lovely woman. I'm now bracing myself against flying monkeys who may come out of the woodwork and try to guilt me into taking in his family. Can't wait to tell them to take in his family themselves. I already talked about the situation with my 2 best friends, and they both were shocked that Dave was so brazen and had no shame. They thought it was suspect that he was so pushy about getting into my home and for days. One friend said that her water heater broke recently and had a plumber come out the same day. It only took a day for it to be fixed. Being against the hotel's idea was a red flag to them. They are curious about what the whole story is. I agree that it feels like it's missing something. I do feel a righteousness about all this. I know I did the right thing. I hate that a previous kindness was used as a weapon against me. Years ago, I thought maybe he had a point that I was somehow not good enough because I was pretty depressed. Like people don't want sad people around. Now with clarity, I see that he had a profoundly bad character, but it did reopen old memories.
Sad memories.
Anyway, thanks for reading if you made it all the way through this. Had to get this off my chest and vent. Update. Dave's water heater, a former friend who called me a bad influence on his family, now wants me to house his family. Well, I'm happy and a little surprised most things have resolved a little more than 24 hours after they started. I guess this is the benefit of people working on your behalf behind the scenes. Also wanted to thank all of those who engaged on the last post. I appreciate the support and knew you'd understand my venting. RIP the inbox, but I did read everything, and you all are the best Reddit community. Not a single troll, which I think might be a Reddit miracle. So on to the update. I'm writing this with a pot of hot tea and recommend you do the same. This is going to be long. Well. All of your guts were right. A broken water heater making a family of 5 need alternative housing was fishy, especially since Dave doesn't even have a water heater. It was all a lie. Cue all of you going, I knew it. So here's the deal. Dave sold his house 6 months ago, and him and his wife Shelley have been trying to buy a bigger home ever since. They're right now, as I type this, already in a hotel with her kids. They have plenty of hot water. I can imagine all of you nodding your heads up and down saying, Yep, 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 yep. I knew you guys wanted an update because the water heater excuse sounded BS. So here it is. Seriously, get yourself some tea. So my sister is in another time zone and has a few hours on me. She apparently has been working on finding out about Dave. Her husband used to moonlight as a PI in grad school, and she has a preternatural ability to find details about people. She's a little creepy in a good way. She also has a social media presence, whereas I do not. I gave her Dave's full real name and things I knew about him, like an address I had for him and the names of his wife and the 2 kids I know. She went to town. She told me that his home went on the market about 6 months ago and sold pretty quickly for a ton more than what it was bought for years ago. It's a seller's market and it was a huge sale. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. She then went to say that she looked around in the city and surrounding towns and couldn't find him buying any other property. That it looked like his house sold for dollar amount. But that's it. So I then texted my 2 friends from yesterday. I told them what my sister found, that it looks like Dave sold his house and doesn't actually have a water heater problem because he doesn't have a water heater. My friends were like, WTF? So one of the 2 friends, Allison, got in touch with my sister, and they went on a social media deep dive. My sister was very worried I was being conned. Allison was a grad schoolmate along with me and Dave 10 plus years ago. She was never super close with him and he wasn't on her radar, but she was among his Facebook friends. I guess thanks goes out to people on Facebook friending literally everybody they even slightly know. At about the same time, I heard back from Kate's brother and sister-in-law who stayed with me back when Kate was hospitalized. It was Kate's SIL Laura who posted about being thankful for my generosity on Facebook. She confirmed she had posted a couple of pictures. They were of my cat, who was looking like she was laying down the house rules, and one of my big plants, a Monstera deliciosa, because she loved them. The thing was that you could extrapolate things about the home: tidy in a large kitchen, nice pantry. This will be relevant. I filled her in about what was going on, and she was mortified that she might have been partly at fault for why Dave wanted to get into my house. She took down the post, untagged my name, and showed me a screen capture verifying she did so, and asked if she can help with anything else. I told her my sister is apparently doing a deep dive and maybe could use help. I put Laura in contact with my sister. Laura apparently also got in contact with Allison. Seemingly randomly and late in the morning, I was asked by Allison for screen grabs of the precise point in the text conversation where Dave says his emergency is about the water heater and it's why he needs me to do him a favor and take in his family/kids for a few days. I gave it to her and it was radio silence for most of the day. I thought, I wonder what is going on. So in the early evening I get a lot more of the story. I got texts from my sister, Allison, and Laura. I'm gonna try and bullet point it. It's a bit circuitous. Dave and his wife Shelley did sold their house 6 months ago. They wanted more room and bedrooms for their now 3 kids and wanted to upgrade. It being a huge and wild seller's market, their home was estimated to have accrued high 6 figures in equity since they bought it. They were excited to put it on the market. Dave and his wife wanted to get top dollar for the house, so they sold it without a contingency that they first needed to buy a home before the seller could move in and officially take the house. Dave was convinced with the huge sale that they could get another one quickly. Their house was sold fast, and there was a bidding war. Dave bragged about it. Him and Shelley went about trying to buy another home, except it wasn't easy at all. All the homes they put a bid in went to someone else who outbid them. The time came for the new sellers to take over the house, and they had to move out. Dave and Shelley didn't think this was that big of a deal. A friend of theirs took them in with the understanding that it would be temporary and they would actively be buying a house, to which Dave and Shelley were doing, but they still were being outbid. They refused to lower expectations or adjust their budget. They would not look at homes that were the same size as their old ones because the whole reason for selling was to get a bigger home. They couldn't win in any of the bidding wars. Dave refused to increase the budget. Indeed, their third kid was born premature and was in the NICU, so they do actually have medical debt. He doesn't want to spend anything more or take out more loans. So Dave, Shelley, and the 3 kids go to someone else's place to stay. They continue to look for homes and can't get one. This repeats now to a third person's home. At this point, people are trying to tell him that maybe it's a good option to wait out the housing bubble when it's not such a seller's market and get an apartment in the meantime. Dave shoots this down because an apartment costs money akin to a mortgage. If he's going to pay for living accommodations per month, that it better be a mortgage. He thinks paying for an apartment is a money drain. Shelley is even more angry at the suggestion. She doesn't want to be in an apartment that will be smaller than their old home. Dave's family seems to be overstaying their welcome. People are getting annoyed. Dave and Shelley are not willing to chip in for groceries. Dave's family is now on the 4th place of people willing to take them in. A month ago is when they ran out of options for free housing. Hilariously, they were all run out because people needed the room for their own family coming for the holidays. No one wants to take the freeloaders in anymore. Shelley is a school teacher in the city, and because of that and that the kids are back in school, they really need to stay in the city. But their only other options now for free housing is Dave's brother, who lives about 2 hours away, and Shelley's parents, who live 6 hours away. Neither option is good for Dave and Shelley's jobs or their kids getting to in-person classes. So Dave and his family needed housing ASAP and booked a hotel. They're really upset about it because their kids are loud and the hotel staff is harping on them to be quieter. Dave and Shelley complain about how they hate living out of a hotel, and how it is unfair they can't get a house with all the money they have. To be clear, they have more than enough money to skate on living in a hotel, which is still way pricier than renting an apartment. Dave likes the idea of the hotel because it's not signing a lease. They can leave anytime and they have maid service. Shelley goes all poor me because she says that the kids are so sad they don't have a backyard to play in. Being in a hotel doesn't let the kids be kids. Slight segue. Allison goes back into Shelley's posts and finds a situation in which she and a gaggle of her friends are talking not so nicely about me. It's a situation that happened at the start of the pandemic. It was back when people were freaking out and started buying out all the toilet paper. People also bought a lot of foodstuffs before it could be restocked because of panic buying. A person I used to go to grad school and was friends with got in touch with me to ask how I was holding up. I thought she was contacting me to offer support and be nice. Her motivation was to get me to give her my food. I've had a chest freezer and a well-stocked pantry for a long time. Having a working pantry is something that got passed to me from my grandma, who survived World War II. My mom did it and now I do it too. Well, this friend who was seemingly sweet to me knows I have a decent amount of food. She said she needed me to give her some of my food because I don't have any kids to feed. She said her kid is a picky eater and I probably have a bunch of frozen chicken to spare. I was impressed by the audacity and told her that if she was desperate for food, that there is a food bank to go to. I'm not going to just give her my food because her son is picky and only eats her homemade chicken nuggets. It's not a food shortage, it's panic buying. If she just gets to the grocery store early in the morning midweek when they typically restock, she'll easily get chicken. She told me I'm selfish. Apparently, she took this to social media to talk behind my back with others who were spouses of grad school friends. Back to Shelley's posts. Shelley supports the woman who tried to get me to give her my frozen chicken. Shelley also considers me selfish for not helping a mother out. She says it's really weird for me to keep so much food around when it's only me, that I obviously have problems. If you guess that you're a bad influence must have been a seed planted by Dave's wife, I think you are correct. When Laura posted about my generosity of them staying a couple of days before they found a long-term hotel situation while Kate was hospitalized, there were some comments made by Shelley about how nice it was for me to do that, sweet as can be, and that my home looked amazing. This web of friendships is seemingly complex, but basically it's a lot of people who know each other from grad school. Grad school was tough and we all let off steam by organizing vacations before most of us were married or had kids yet. I always invited my close college friends who stayed in the state to the group vacations where we'd all pitch in and rent out lake houses or cabins at ski resorts. Again, recent posts have Shelley going all poor me because she says that the kids are so sad they don't have a backyard to play in, how being in a hotel doesn't let the kids be kids. Then there is a weird Shelly post 2 days ago that sounds like her family has found a place that's so cute and her kids will be able to get out of the hotel situation. She says it has a great kitchen for her kids. Q Dave texting me yesterday asking me, after no contact for 3 years, that he has a broken water heater and needs me to take in his family for a few days while it gets fixed. Obviously, you all know I told him no. Well. My friends see that Dave and Shelly have made some passive-aggressive comments on social media this morning. How society is terrible nowadays when friends renege on their offer of helping families with kids out of a tough situation. Shelly says her cute home situation fell through. She gets a bunch of sympathy from her Karen friends. She says her kids are so disappointed. I think this is probably when Allison asked for my screen grabs of Dave's water heater sob story. Allison goes on a tear and posts. She shares the screen grabs of Dave's water heater lie. She and Laura start calling them out. They share the truth that Dave and Shelly did not have a new housing situation lined up. They were trying to get into my home by lying about a broken water heater, and I had never agreed to have them stay in my home. Laura called them huge a-holes for trying to take advantage of me. Allison went rip about the situation from 3 years ago. My real friends like Allison were very much there for me while people like Dave were like, yeah, I don't care. Plus you're a bad influence on my family. Allison let everyone know about Dave calling me a bad influence on his family for my child-free lifestyle and how he's pathetic thinking he can walk back into someone's life who he insulted. Allison is also child-free herself. People told off Dave for being super mean and now wanting favors. It apparently snowballed into people calling him super cheap and a leech. The people who let his family stay with them during the last 6 months came out of the woodwork to lay into him. One person described how dirty Dave's family was and how it was insane how much extra cleaning they had to do, that his kids had no manners. They terrorized their dogs and it was awesome when they finally left. People expressed anger that they were trying to pull one on me and then try to make me out to be the bad guy on social media. There were people I hadn't talked to in a long time who told him that I was a good person, how I helped them in grad school for random things and didn't deserve this. Really nice to hear. Some related how I've helped people get jobs, something more than Dave has ever done. I'm very involved in the grad school networking community, and I like sharing job opportunities and wisdom about finding scientific jobs and mentoring. Dave's own brother said he was disgusted by this behavior. He remembered how much I helped when their mom passed away. He said their mom would be rolling in her grave if she knew how he was treating people. My sister ended up getting me to Zoom with her and screen shared her monitor to show me what the hoopla looked like. Maybe this is why I never actually got a single message from anyone about not letting a family into my home. I was expecting flying monkeys. I never got them. My God, the schadenfreude. Dave told me he was going to put me on blast on Facebook. Ends up getting blasted himself. How stupid. How incredibly stupid. I had the text of him lying about the goddamned water heater. He must have thought since I wasn't on social media that I'd never be able to tell others he was lying about a water heater or know that he was currently enjoying hot hotel water. I feel like I dodged a nuclear-tipped missile. I had to pour myself a drink after work and really think about all this. After thinking about it and considering all the context, I believe Dave and Shelly were going to try and squat in my home. He did go off when I mentioned the 7-day rule when people get tenants' rights in our state. I knew it was fishy. You all called it too. I'm thinking he was a cheap bastard who didn't want to pay more money for a hotel. He still didn't want to find an apartment. He had exhausted all in-city free housing opportunities with friends. I was a last-ditch effort. His wife peripherally knew I was amenable to guests. She also knew my home was nice and that I had a ton of food for her kids to eat. They had a reputation already for eating people out of house and home. If they stayed with me for a week, they'd be tenants and I'd have to spend time kicking them out with the courts, as it probably would have taken months to evict them. Much easier to run a scam on a single person and push them out of their own home than try to do the same thing with their real friends who already have kids and not a lot of ample space. He was only looking for free housing so he'd be able to put every penny he had into his goal of buying a 4+ bedroom house with all the money he got in the sale of his old home. I don't know for certain, but it makes sense. So I decided to send him one last text. I unblocked him and sent him this before reblocking his number. Hey Dave, so I found out you were lying about that water heater. You don't even have a water heater. You're living in a hotel along with sitting on a huge pile of cash from selling your old home. I think it's really shitty of you for lying to me and trying to get into my home to leech off me, especially because you destroyed our friendship when you called me a bad influence on your family. I didn't tell you back then, but I'm telling you now that you are trash. Your mom would be ashamed of you. I see it's all projection because you are a bad influence, not only on my life but on the lives of others. If you really believed I was a bad influence, you never would have tried to get your family into my home this week. But if you still think I'm some sort of bad influence, then you won't have to worry about me helping you out or granting any sort of favor in the future. I'm gonna keep my bad influence far away from your family. Oh, and Shelly sounds like she's become a real treat. The last thing I will do for you, because I'm not a monster, is to say that you need to do your duty as a husband and father and pay to get a stable apartment for your family. Stop playing these freeloader games. Here's a link to our local Craigslist housing page. I'm sure you'll find something. Oh, and hope to see you at the next non-Zoom alumni event. I'm sure it'll be great to catch up in person. So it's done. I said my piece. Once again, you all were right that something else was going on. I feel really sick right now how someone could think about doing this to me. Also feel kind of sick thinking about the idea of letting them into my home. That would have been a nightmare. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. I didn't defend my husband when my friends made false DV allegations against him. This might be a long post. I am at a loss on what I should do. I met my husband when I was 20 at a gym. I was trying to lose some weight. He eventually noticed that I was sticking to my New Year's resolution. 2 months later, we were dating. I learned that he was from Indiana and he had been stationed in Texas for just over 2 years at that point. Eventually, he met my family and my parents instantly liked him. My 2 younger sisters took a bit longer to woo over, but my older brother and him clashed over sports and loved to trash talk each other. So all in all, my family loved him. He was incredibly patient and kept me motivated not only at the gym but in school as well. He had to work late on his birthday, 9 p.m. So I took him out to Buffalo Wild Wings for his birthday and we had a great time. I had also set up a surprise birthday party for him the next day, his actual birthday. Nothing extravagant, but his 2 roommates, the lady I thought he was dating, and another coworker of theirs were immediately on board and had told him they were going on a couple trip for the weekend. My family wanted to come to be there for the surprise and cake before heading home, and a handful of other friends. Everything was in place and the plan was that I would hide behind the door and jump on his back and cover his eyes. Then the lights would come on and everyone would yell. Looking back, that was such a dumb idea, but it sounded funny at the time. I heard his truck pull into the drive and everyone hid. It was almost pitch black in the house. He opens the door and shuts it and takes a few steps, and I jump on his back. Everything happened so fast. I was immediately flipped over and slammed into the ground as the lights came on. I felt a sharp, intense pain in my shoulder and my ears were ringing. He was horrified at what happened and my brother and dad started yelling at him. He was trying to help and my mother and his roommates had to get between him and my father and brother. He just kept apologizing to me. So we spent his birthday in the ER. I had a separated shoulder and broken collarbone. I was initially furious at him for doing that and didn't want him around me, so he sat in the waiting room. By then, my brother and father had calmed down and realized it for what it was. What was he supposed to think walking into his house believing it to be empty and get jumped on from behind? Eventually, I agreed to let him come back and he immediately started to cry and telling me how sorry he was and that he would never ever do that to me again. I want to make this clear to everyone reading this. This was in no way his fault. It was a natural reaction and I wish I had never jumped on his back. He struggled more than I did to put this behind us, but I kept up with my schoolwork and we continued to grow close over the next year. I would listen to him vent about work and he would do the same for me and my schoolwork. We went on weekend trips, sometimes just us and sometimes with friends. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this short, but I have so many happy memories that I want to share. But I'll get to the reason why I'm posting this. Eventually, he asked me to marry him and it was a no-brainer. He was and still is the love of my life and the only man for me. We got married in a small ceremony with family and a few friends. When his second enlistment ended, we decided that the opportunity for him as a civilian air traffic controller was too good to pass up. It was hard for him to say goodbye to the Air Force, but he wanted us to finally settle down. We had a move between our wedding and when he finally left the service. By then I was working and we had a very large amount saved up as he waited to find out where the FAA wanted him to go. We stayed with my brother and his wife back in my hometown. Eventually, he got the email and to our surprise, he would be working fairly close to where we already were. He knew how much I had missed my hometown, so we decided to buy a house and he would commute almost an hour and a half each way. It is a huge sacrifice on his part. 2020 happened and I lost my job, but my husband made more than enough to cover my lost wages. We weren't getting any younger and decided to start a family. It took a bit, but eventually I got pregnant and we have a wonderful 2-year-old son. First year was a struggle for us both as we tried to adapt to parenthood. My husband struggled more than I did, but I helped him. If you have kept up with the news, the FAA is short-staffed with not enough controllers, so my husband works mandatory overtime and usually most shifts are 10 hours, legally the max, and each Wednesday he gets off work at 11 p.m. and has to be back at work by 8 a.m. That's a very short turnaround that would leave him with at the most 5 hours of sleep if he drove home. So on those nights he sleeps at a coworker's house. He has offered to make the drive, but I don't want him driving tired or working tired either. Honestly, it did suck on those nights when he wasn't home and our son just wouldn't sleep. He encouraged me to reconnect with old friends and I have, which leaves us with the reason for this post. 2 weeks ago, I met up with some old girlfriends for a play date to watch our kids crawl around. Most of them were complaining about their husbands, fiancés, or boyfriends not helping around the house. I do most of the housework, but my husband has always helped me when he is home. I changed the subject and asked one of my friends, I'll call Lana, how often does her daughter wake up in the middle of the night? This eventually led to me telling them that my husband stays near his work on Wednesdays and some of those nights were rough on me, especially early on. That got me a lot of sympathy and I don't know why it felt good to hear someone that wasn't family say those things. I kept my mouth shut when they said my husband should just suck it up and take care of his kid and that their husbands commute 2 hours to work each way. I wanted to say, well, your husbands have the same hours every day and aren't responsible for others' lives. Instead, I just nodded in agreement. It makes me sick that I did that. My husband woke up just as much as I did and still does when our son needs him. Last week, my husband had a very rare Saturday and Sunday off. My parents offered us a child-free weekend to include Thursday and Friday and we took it. My husband was working and I met my sister-in-law that Thursday for lunch to invite them over for dinner on Friday. I tripped on the curb and had to twist to make sure my son didn't hit the cement. I banged my right knee pretty good. It's still purple but not hurting as much. We wanted to have some people over for dinner and invited my older brother/sister-in-law, as well as 2 of my friends from the previous week and their husbands. Going back to getting slammed by my husband, he mentioned that he hates that story, that even if it wasn't intentional, he seriously injured me. So I stopped telling that story out of respect for him. Friday rolls around and my husband picks up everything we need to make a large pot of spaghetti and a few bottles of wine. We had been discussing trying to have another child, so I was planning on getting a bit tipsy and jumping my husband's bones after our guests left. I wore a white halter top dress that he loves. Risky to wear when eating pasta and drinking red wine, but I felt good. Our guests arrive and we all pour ourselves a glass of wine and make small talk. I noticed Lana whispering something to her husband but ignore it, figuring maybe she liked something and was asking her husband if they could get something similar. The dinner starts and everything is going well. My husband isn't a big drinker but had went to get himself a second glass and tongs to make getting seconds easier. I was almost done with my 4th, as was my sister-in-law and Elle. My other friend Sarah, fake name, was sipping her first and their husbands were taking it slow. My brother got a call from work and stepped into a guest room to take the call. That's when my sister-in-law asked me to tell the story of how I broke my collarbone and separated my shoulder. I figured since my husband was out of the room that no harm, no foul. I tell the story and I'm laughing. My sister-in-law is laughing, and Sarah and her husband seem amused. Elle and her husband aren't laughing. Elle reaches across the table and grabs my hand and says, I saw your knee and how bruised it is. My sister-in-law snorts as Elle continues. You said he doesn't help with your son, and now he has you believing that what he did to your shoulder was some kind of accident. Husband walks in and asks what we are talking about, and Lana tells him that she knows that he is abusing me, that he doesn't help with our son, that he obviously shoved me down and bruised my knee, that I should have left him when he broke my shoulder. My husband immediately looks at me and asks, "What the hell did you tell her?" That's when Elle's husband speaks up and tells my husband to lower his voice because he won't tolerate verbal abuse, and that, if you lay a finger on her, I will beat your ass. I'm too shocked to speak and stick up for my husband. My husband didn't take kindly to that and told them to get the fuck out of our house. Brother hears the confrontation as Lana and Sarah's husband stand between my husband and I. My husband tells them again, "Don't make me repeat myself. I'm not going to tolerate being called a wife beater. Get the hell out." My brother tries explaining that my husband doesn't hit me and I just turtle like a coward. My husband is trying to calm down, and eventually my sister-in-law gets Sarah to drag her husband out of the house. Elle is still trying to keep her husband riled up. I remember my husband looking at me as if he was pleading with me to speak up for him, but I just sat there unable to do anything. I don't know why. I've never been in a situation like this before. Elle and her husband started telling me I needed to leave with him so my husband doesn't hurt me. My husband flips his shit and my brother-in-law had to almost tackle him. Tell them the truth, B. Don't walk out that door. My husband's voice was surprisingly calm. I followed them out of the door. I was almost in the car with them when my sister-in-law, who seemed to sober up by then, pulled me back, and my brother forced Elle and her husband to finally leave. I got back inside and just started crying. I looked at my husband and the love in his eyes was gone. He looked like a stranger to me. I tried to hug him and he pulled away and said he needed some space. I remember telling him that perhaps he could stay with my brother. I was insulted in our home. You stood by and let your friends lie and you didn't say a word. You walked out the door to follow them. You chose them over me. If anyone needs to leave, it's you. I'm not saying you have to leave, but I'm not leaving our house tonight. I need some time and space to think about how to move forward. My brother agreed with my husband and I left with them. My brother didn't say a word as we rode to his house. I couldn't stop crying and wondering why I let them insult my husband and our marriage like that. When we got home, my brother went off on me, asking me the same questions I had asked myself, that my husband never did the things my friends accused him of. I haven't slept that night. Every call and text went unanswered. I told my parents what happened. They reacted in a calmer manner but aren't happy with me right now. My family is supportive but firmly on my husband's side, and honestly, I don't blame them. I have no excuse for not defending him and trying to de-escalate the situation. My husband wants space and I'm trying to give him that, but I miss being near him. He has stopped by every day to see our son, but he has been avoiding talking to me. I got a call from him today saying that he is deeply hurt and feels betrayed, that he isn't sure if he can trust me again. He still loves me, but he needs to sort out things on his end. But he was considering separation. I told Elle and Sarah to fuck off and never contact me again. I'm so hurt and angry, very angry at myself. I want my husband back, but I'm not sure if that's possible. I need some advice, please. I want things to be back to normal. I want to be picked up and slung over his shoulder as he grabs my butt. I want him to kiss my stretch marks and tell me that he loves me even more for them. What do I do? How can I save my marriage? Now on to the next story. Story 3. My sister and I have never been close. Other than the huge age gap, my parents have always treated us differently. Before she was born, Dad lost his job and we had to rent out our house and move into a small place. We had to change a lot of things because we didn't have much to work with. Dad was really trying to find a new job, but it was getting harder and harder. So both Mom and Dad began applying everywhere they could. Then out of nowhere, Mom got a call from someone she used to work with. He said he was starting something new and wanted people he could trust to join his team. At that time, the pay wasn't much, but it was certainly more than what we had going. Mom immediately accepted. 6 months had passed and Dad was finally hired. We were doing better, but we had to pay off quite a few people because my parents had borrowed money while we were still at the house. 3 months after Dad lost his job, we moved out and rented it. They understood that it would be a while before everything went back to how it used to be, so we made the choice to keep renting the house. About a year later, Mom found out she was going to have a baby. Although things had calmed down, they thought it would be wise to use the rent money to help with the cost for Mom and the new baby. We ended up moving to a slightly larger apartment. My parents had learned the importance of money by then, so they were really cautious with how they spent it. In all this time that had passed, my communication with my parents had turned to hi, good morning, and bye. They were so worried about money that it was all they talked about. The first time we shifted, I used to wait for them to come back. First, it was only Dad who came back late, then it was Mom. When they were back home, they were so tired that they wouldn't even glance at me. If I tried talking to them or going in for a hug, they would get irritated and take me off. I understood that my parents were stressed, but I think they could at least afford to smile at me. A small one would have done too. I basically bathed myself, did the laundry by hand, made sandwiches when I was hungry, and walked myself to school. I tried to be as independent as I could. They, on the other hand, hadn't even noticed I was trying my best to help them out. After we shifted a second time, all focus was on Mom since she was pregnant. He tried to keep her as comfortable as he could. Mom didn't stop working, but she didn't work as late. I was excited about the news of Mom's pregnancy. I thought having another sibling would be great for company. I tried to express my happiness, but Mom seemed easily annoyed. Every time I tried to talk to her, she'd just tell me to leave her alone. Dad was busy working throughout the day, often coming home later than Mom, but whenever he did, he'd always bring something for either Mom or the baby. He would just ignore me, saying he was tired. I was basically a stranger in my own home. I used to cry myself to sleep. Even if they heard me, they would ignore me and shut their door. 3 months after my dad lost his job, I was shifted to a public school. They had enrolled me back in my previous one, and after Mom became pregnant, I knew they weren't going to. I wanted to go back to my old school and friends. I wanted to meet them. It was so lonely at home. In that school, nobody really spoke to me. I just wanted to talk to someone. As Mom's bump got bigger and bigger, they wouldn't even acknowledge my presence. It was as if I wasn't even there. I was sad and hurt. They didn't pay attention to what I had to say, so I felt helpless. Mom was nearing the end of her pregnancy, just days away from having the baby. We didn't have any family nearby, at least not that I knew of. I ended up staying home alone for days while Mom was in the hospital. Even though I was alone, I didn't say anything about it. I just wanted her to be okay. And I wanted to see the baby. After they came home, they were busy. The baby was always in either of their arms. I asked if I could see her, and Dad let me into their room. Mom was breastfeeding her and got agitated. She told me to get out. Dad didn't say anything. I didn't get to spend time with my sister or hold her. Mom was very protective of her. Dad at least tried a couple of times to let me be near her, but Mom didn't let it happen. It was as if she hated me, and I didn't understand why. I could clearly see that she loved my sister. A few months after Mom was able to recover, my parents decided to move into the house we owned. I thought maybe when we moved back, things would get better, but it wasn't the case. As time passed, their behavior towards me only worsened. One day, I couldn't hold it in anymore and had a breakdown in front of them while they were in the hallway. I accidentally woke up my sister, and seeing me upset made her cry. Now everyone was angry with me, and I couldn't stop crying. Dad dragged me back up and locked me in my room, telling me to shut up. I fell asleep crying. They didn't want me, and I realized that, though they owned a house, it wasn't very big. It had only 2 bedrooms, so they put me in the attic to make room for my sister. I had to clean the attic myself. It was horrible up there. So cold. On top of that, it was the darkest place ever. I hated it. There was no wiring in there, so there was no possible AC or light. I would go up there, and when my parents had gone to bed, I would go back down and sleep on the couch. They had caught me a few times, but didn't really care as long as I was out of their way. As I got older, I found a job, but I didn't tell them about it. When I received my first paycheck, I had this urge to buy something for them, hoping it might make them like me more. However, I realized it might not solve anything, so I decided against it and just kept the money. I didn't even buy anything for myself. But as time passed, it was soon approaching the moment for university, and I found myself with little money saved up. It wasn't enough to cover the university fees, food, and living costs. I tried bringing it up, but they clearly declined, saying they didn't have much. They were even surprised I had brought up university. All that focus was on my sister, and I didn't blame her for that. Even growing up, she wasn't rude to me. We didn't talk, and I didn't hold a grudge either. Felt like a lost cause. My parents never really encouraged a bond between us. Even when my sister would try to connect with me or I'd reach out to her, it always ended in drama. I couldn't handle the tension that followed, so I kept my distance. They behaved as if I would somehow cause harm to her. I had to endure it though and just keep my feelings to myself. My only chance of going to university was if I got sponsored by a full scholarship. I was a smart kid. I was hoping I would get it. I used to go to my neighbor's house and use his laptop. He was new to the area and had a daughter. She was a year younger than me. I applied for a whole lot of scholarships. I managed to get into a good university, but I couldn't get a full scholarship. I had to cover my own living and food costs. The university was 2 states away, but I knew I could get there. I managed to get in contact with a cafe owner and asked for work. She was an older lady and was very sweet. Turned out she had been there for a while before I even arrived. When I left, my parents didn't seem to notice or care. If I hadn't told them, they might not have even realized I was gone. I didn't have a plan for where to live since everything was so costly and required a down payment. When I arrived, I approached the owner of a cafe, an elderly lady, and asked if I could stay there temporarily while I figured out a more permanent place to live. She took pity on me and told me there was a room upstairs where she stayed, and I could stay with her, but she would cut it off my paycheck. I was honestly just happy I didn't have to sleep on the streets. I had very little cash left, and I didn't want to spend it on a motel. While there, I took on a few more jobs in my free time. The old lady was clearly worried about me, which surprised me. I hadn't seen that expression directed at me in so long. Slowly, I settled down. I got through university and managed to land a position through pre-placements. That was probably the first time I bought myself remotely expensive clothes. It was for the interview. My worn-out hoodie wouldn't do. Once I received my offer letter, the first person I shared the news with was the cafe owner. She had been there for me when I needed support that my parents couldn't provide. I'll always appreciate her for that. She celebrated with me, hugging and kissing me, expressing how proud she was. That day, I couldn't hold back my tears. She had become like family to me, and I had a deep love and appreciation for her. She helped me move after I graduated. I needed to find a place closer to my job, and she came with me to help me decide. Even after I got settled there, I went down at least once or twice a month to visit her. We spoke regularly. I had tried to keep in contact with my parents, but they never answered my calls. Not even once. Sometimes my sister would pick up, but it would be an awkward conversation. I eventually stopped calling them. While working there, I made friends. I was an introverted person, but they made an effort to talk to me. They would invite me when they would go out. I would usually decline, but sometimes they would convince me to go. Roughly a year later, the company offered free tickets for a small getaway. Each employee could bring one person. I made the choice to use my saved vacation days. I hadn't used any before and invited the only person I considered family, the woman from the cafe. I affectionately called her Auntie, since she wasn't quite old enough to be a grandma. She suggested I bring someone else, but I was adamant that she should come with me. All my friends were at the company, and they all had trip tickets. They had asked me who I was bringing along and wanted to meet her, so we planned to go on vacation together. Funnily enough, she was an extrovert and got along well with them. I was still a shy person, and they would drag me around wherever they went. On that trip itself, a guy approached me. My auntie was squealing when that happened and made me go with him. He was visiting here too. I have to give her credit. The man I met there is now my husband. He lived about half an hour from where I worked. When we got back from the trip, he called me up and asked me out. He was incredibly patient. Our relationship started with 2 months of dating, then blossomed into a 3-year commitment before we tied the knot, and we've been happily married for 4 years now. When it came time for our wedding, I extended invitations to my parents and sister, but none of them showed up. My then fiancé, who knew about my difficult family history, was deeply upset by their absence. In fact, he was so upset that he didn't even want to invite them in the first place. A year or two later, my sister got married. I was not invited. That's okay. I saw a few pictures online and congratulated her. It was a lavish wedding. She was around 22 or 23, so I knew she couldn't afford it. Our parents had to have paid for it. I didn't mind. I had moved on and was happy with my life. I was pregnant with our first child, and my husband was elated. He was so excited. His parents had become my parents, and my aunt visited frequently too. Sometimes all of them would stay with us during my pregnancy. Suddenly, one day, my aunt received a letter in my name. I was surprised by who it was. It was my parents. So she offered to deliver the letter to me if I wished. I thought perhaps they had learned about my pregnancy and were trying to reconnect. It brought a flicker of happiness. During my university days, I updated them about my current address and contact information as everything had changed since our last communication. I was already 5 months into my pregnancy when I had this conversation, and I discussed it with my husband. He was very hesitant about that letter. He tried to explain his perspective to me, and it made sense. They hadn't reached out to me for years, and now they've popped up out of nowhere. I guess I was a little more than happy that they had reached out. It blinded me for a moment. He asked me if he could read the letter first, just in case there were some inappropriate things in there. I didn't really mind waiting. My husband was incredibly cautious about everything, especially because I was pregnant. After a couple of days, my aunt arrived with the letter, and it definitely wasn't what I had anticipated. When my husband read it, his expression twisted into one of disgust. I had never seen him so furious with anyone before. He handed the letter to my aunt and then just came over and hugged me tightly. I asked him what was written, and he just looked at me with so much sadness and hugged me again. He told me that I shouldn't read it and that it was disgusting. I wanted to get it over with, so I just held his hand and asked my aunt to read it aloud. My parents had lost their own house. They were kicked out because of their dear daughter. Before I had left, I knew that they had put the house in her name to fund her lavish wedding with her now divorced husband. She had mortgaged the house. My parents knew about it, and they had put in their own money too. Now they're asking me to pay them back the money I supposedly owe them for taking care of me for so many years. That news hit me like a wave. My sister's ex-husband refused to cover the mortgage, and she couldn't manage it either. I sat there trying to process it all with a blank expression. My husband's arms stayed around me, comforting me with gentle rubs on my back. But inside, it was just an overwhelming disappointment. That night, I went to bed in tears, feeling a heavy weight of sadness. I couldn't help but feel guilty about it all. I didn't want my unborn baby to be affected by the selfish actions of my parents, but they were going to get payback. I wasn't going to be nice about it. I was happy, and I wanted to continue to be happy. I wasn't going to let them come in and have their way. They did get a response, but from my lawyer. It was a warning that if they sent me any more letters and tried to contact me again, they would be sued for harassment. They also got another letter attached from my lawyer informing them of child neglect. I made sure to let them know that I didn't owe them anything. From the clothes that I wore to the food that I ate to the house that I own, it was all me. Sure, after I got married, that was both me and my husband's hard work and efforts. Before all this, I worked my way through school and college entirely on my own. I hustled hard, and my efforts paid off. I landed a job and even got promoted solely because of the sheer hard work I put in. But through all of that, they weren't there. They didn't support me financially or emotionally for any of it. And those scraps I made sandwiches from or the leftovers I barely managed to eat, those definitely didn't count as the care or sustenance I needed. So I owe them nothing. I also told them that they contacted the wrong child. The child that owes them was their daughter who mortgaged the house they put in her name. Since they've dug the hole they're in, they can climb out of it by themselves. Update. 2 months later. I'm close to my delivery date now. I thought I would update you on my current situation. This will be the last update. My parents haven't contacted me from what I know. My sister gave the house to the bank. I don't know if they owe anyone anymore, but they are back to where they started. OP went through too much. Did they seriously have the guts to ask for money that their little princess lost? Bad things happen to bad people. I hope you have a safe delivery. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I'm still fuming over this, so forgive me if this post isn't perfectly put together. I just need some third-party insight. Hi, 26 female. I have a 28-year-old sister. Let's call her Jay. Jay is a mother to 3 kids aged 4, 7, and 8 years old. The father is a really absent parent and not around much. He works the night shift and then sleeps all day. I feel bad for her because it definitely isn't a fair situation, and she doesn't get any time to herself. Anyway, the situation is this. My sister invited me to hang out on Saturday night. I agreed to come around and hang out with her, but she said she would have to leave to run an errand at some point. She told me she'd only be gone for about half an hour. She asked if I could keep an eye on her youngest child, who was asleep, while she quickly went out to take care of something. I was a bit hesitant, but I agreed reluctantly. The other 2 kids were already staying at our parents' place for the weekend, so I understood that she probably wanted some time to herself to handle the errand. It was rare for her to get even half an hour of free time given how busy she usually was with the kids. She promised it would be, I come over, we chat and catch up and watch a movie. It's really pleasant until she says she has to leave for that errand and leaves me instructions on what to do in case the kid wakes up, but says to just call her because she's only around the corner. I'm really on edge about it because I struggle a lot with really bad anxiety and panic disorder, which I'm currently in therapy and experimenting with meds to manage, but truthfully we haven't discovered any method that truly works for me to handle looking after kids for an extended period. She's well aware of this and knows that I would really struggle and potentially panic if I had to care for a child for longer than the time she initially promised. Mentally, I'm just not in the right place to handle situations like a crying child, for instance. So the half hour she mentioned passed and she hadn't returned. Another 15 minutes go by, making it 45 minutes in total. I start to worry and decide to give her a call to check if everything's all right and when she plans to be back. After multiple rings, she finally picks up the phone. She said something came up and she'd be another hour, maybe an hour and 15. I basically lost my shit and say if she's not back in 15 minutes then I'm leaving. She said I wouldn't do that and to please just stay there and hung up. At this point I'm on the verge of having a panic attack, so do my breathing exercises. When her husband leaves a message, when he does not, so text him about the situation as well and also text my mom, and leave about 15 minutes as I said. Apparently my sister didn't come home for another 2 hours, and when she did, her husband was with the child and they are both fuming. He got my message 15 minutes after I left, so 30 minutes after I sent it. Now both of them are giving me the silent treatment, accusing me of putting the child's life in danger. I can't help but feel that staying there longer might have made things worse. After all, the kids were fast asleep throughout, and if I had a panic attack, it might have startled the little one awake to see me in a state of disarray. She, your sister, shouldn't have left her kid with someone incapable of taking care of a kid. She can get charged with abandonment. You left a 4-year-old alone, putting his life in danger and also possibly risking legal trouble. How far away do your parents live? Could you not have called them? Called any local friends? Called the damn cops? Why do you don't leave a 4-year-old by themselves in the house? Anything could happen. I hope you never have kids. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My girlfriend cheated on me in my face. Her reaction is ridiculous. My girlfriend, 26 female, and I, 29 male, have been in a relationship for 4 years and have been living together in a rented apartment for 2 years. Yesterday, she and I went to a party. We were both drunk and had fun. At the party, there was a guy who, from time to time, approached a random woman and asked them, "Can you give me a kiss on the cheek?" So that at the last second, the guy moved his face, causing his lips to collide with those of the girl he asked. Before, I warned my girlfriend about that guy, and she could even see it with her own eyes. I told her to be careful if he approaches her and asks for the same thing because there were also several girls who refused, and he simply did not insist. A couple of hours later, I was with my girlfriend, and that guy comes up and asks my partner the same thing. She takes me aside to have a quick talk and tells me that nothing will happen, that if he tries, she will move back herself so they don't kiss. I told her that I did not agree with this at all, and that I felt very uncomfortable, and that I would not take responsibility if she ended up doing it. She ignored what I said and ended up accepting. I don't know why, but I wasn't surprised when she didn't back away like she said and ended up kissing him. She then looked at me and got uncomfortable. Then the boy went the other way to continue with his fun. I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at her. I just turned around and went to our apartment. She followed me, even though I didn't tell her to do so, saying that she didn't have time to react and that it wasn't her fault since we were in a public place. I didn't want to make a scene, so I waited until we got home. Once at home, I told her that yes, it was entirely her fault. She saw how the guy did that with other women, and I even warned her that this could happen, and she still did it. She said that the alcohol made her act reckless. I told her not to come out with her excuses, that she was fully aware of what happened and that this was pure infidelity to my damn face. At this moment, she went to visit her sister because today is her birthday. I told her that I would not go, and I told her explicitly that I want to reevaluate our relationship. If she is going to use alcohol as an excuse for her infidelities, then I can't trust her anymore. If she does that to my face, I don't want to imagine what she would do when she is with her friends. Before leaving, she begged me not to exaggerate, that I can't throw away 4 years for a non-consensual kiss. I told her that the moment she agreed to play that boys' game, she was already giving her consent to what could pass. She is already an adult, and I expected her to act according to her age. The more time passes, the more I want to tell her to go to hell. The rent contract ends at the end of the year, but I was thinking of using a part of our savings to pay the rest and end it prematurely. I don't want to be with someone who can kiss the first idiot I meet at a party and wait for me to accept it without problems. On the other hand, and it makes me quite sad to have to leave the relationship, but forgiving a lack of respect of this magnitude is opening the door to more things like this happening in the future. My younger sister and my parents agree with me, but my older brother, who is the closest person to me in the family, thinks it can be solved. I really don't know what to do. Well, a lot has happened since my first post, and a lot of people asked me for an update, so here it goes. First of all, my ex and I ended up breaking up almost a week ago. She apologized for what happened, and she knows that in my eyes it was infidelity because that type of thing is something that both she and I had already made clear in the past that counted as infidelity, and she knows that infidelity is a pretty serious issue for me, whatever its form. Regarding the lease, we paid the rest of the month in advance to be able to move. She went to her parents' house and I went to mine. We separated our savings 50-50, considering that we both earned the same salary despite working in different fields, so there were no problems in that regard. There's not much more to say about it. I've had a couple of dates since then with Tinder girls, but nothing serious for now. I haven't thought about starting something serious, at least I don't think so for the rest of this year. One of the things my ex said to me when we broke up was, "At least you have more years ahead." I suppose referring to our age difference and how she is already close to 30. For more clarification, I did not intervene because, first of all, I am not someone who uses violence unless necessary. If the guy would have forced my ex if she rejected him or harassed her to accept his proposition, I would have intervened, but not in a situation that she could get out on her own. She was my partner, not my daughter. She was a little jealous during the relationship. She tried to make me jealous before, but I have always had her as a priority in our relationship. I'm not jealous at all because I trusted her. In any case, I never prohibited her from anything or tried to control her in any way. In the same way, I let her take her own decisions. The only thing I wanted in exchange is respect of the limits that I have established, just as I respected hers. All my serious relationships have been with women my age or older. I don't like the idea of being with people younger than me. I even read someone who told me that it was advisable to be with someone at least 7 years younger. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comment section. Thank you and see you in the next video.